Norway is obviously a small country, and to suddenly play a tour in South America, for instance, you play for thousands and thousands of people, and then 2 days later you're coming home and you're shoveling snow, and you talk to the neighbor, and the neighbor is like totally unaware of what you're doing, and it's like, oh, so how was your week? And I'm like just shoveling snow, like, yeah, pretty good actually. So maybe it's a good thing that that metal and black metal and extreme music is the way it is, and it's not mainstream. It's not supposed to be mainstream, and but I think maybe back in the day we wondered why are we not getting the attention that the big names in pop and rock and stuff gets, but I'm glad we don't, because it's something special, and it's something for particularly interested people, and that's what makes it magical in my eyes.
Greetings, Legion, and welcome to episode 226 of Into the Necrosphere. My guest this week requires absolutely no introduction. He is the legendary Silenoz guitarist for the band Dimmu Borgir, and hot on the heels of an absolutely triumphant performance at the Inferno Festival in Norway this year. I had to have him on the podcast. We spoke at length about his feelings after the fact, as far as the Inferno Festival is concerned. We spoke about the complexities of recording with large orchestras. He reflected a lot on the band's career that spans over 3 decades now, and he also shared with me why his relationship with Shagrath has endured for as long as it has. It is a sensational conversation that is going to be coming your way very shortly, but before we get to that, there's the matter of the Into the Necrosphere Independent Band Spotlight, and this week we have a returning act, a band that I have featured on the podcast before, whose music I thoroughly enjoy, and I decided that it was time to remind you all that you need to check them out if you have not already done so. The band is Obsidian Shrine. The track I'm going to play is the title track off of their brand new EP. This is Dereliction of Divinity. That was Obsidian Shrine off their brand new EP with the title track called Dereliction of Divinity. Check them out right now on Bandcamp if you haven't done so yet. Absolutely sensational. They've also done a split record with another band called Salt, which I've also featured on the podcast. They have a couple of albums of their own, but superb band. Unfairly flying under the radar as far as I'm concerned, and I'm keen to change that. My friends, if you are new to Into the Necrosphere, make sure that you do me a little favor, grab the closest folding chair and beat the subscribe button on your platform of choice until it begs you for mercy. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and on X, and of course you can deck out your wardrobe with a flash Into the Necrosphere hoodie, tank top, or t-shirt, and then very importantly, you should be following my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, dedicated to bringing you high-quality content week in and week out, starting on a Monday with Horrible 666, hosted by Brandon Legion. Every Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere. I've got something quite different lined up for you guys next week. My good friend Runa Skov of the high-end audio brand Griffin Audio was my guest. I recorded an in-person conversation with him at the Munich High-End Hi-Fi show this past weekend, during which we discussed everything from his personal career journey, his thoughts on the industry, his love of music, our mutual discovery of hi-fi, and much, much more. It is very fascinating. It's what I was going to do as a Friday episode, but then as I was posting some photos from the Munich High-End Hi-Fi show, a couple of your comments got me thinking. There were a few suggestions I took on board as well, and so I'm going to flesh that out next week into a high-end audio dedicated episode. So I'm going to do a rundown of my favorite test tracks that I like listening to, or like testing out new equipment on. I'm going to be talking about or giving you guys an update on what's on my hi-fi rack currently. I'll also make some recommendations on a couple of setups that you can look into on a modest budget. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Not something I'm going to do an awful lot, and typically, as you guys know, it's all about getting people from different bands, or at least from the music industry, on here, and that's not going to change. I've got some really exciting interviews in the pipeline, but trust me, you guys are going to love this one. On a Wednesday, moving on, we've got the Sensei Mike Hill bringing you another episode of Everything Went Black. I was very pleased to see, or very pleased to hear, I should say, that the mighty Drugoth, who is his guest on this past week's episode, actually referred to him by his now what should be standard globally accepted name, Sensei Mike Hill. He returns on a Thursday with one of my favorite podcasts of the week, the excellent Necromaniacs, alongside his co-hosts Sheriff Mike Scondato and Professor Jeff Kashid. The Sinister Minister, Reverend Carl Hikara, takes you on a curated journey through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast Soul Knox, and then skulking in the shadows, the Great Cheyenne of the band Trivax brings you another episode of Iblis Manifestations when you least expect it, but when you definitely need it. When I am done talking to Silenoz, don't go anywhere, because there are brand new tracks by the likes of Forgotten Tomb, Vulvodynia, I think Cryptic Hatred, and many more, just begging to be rounded up for judgment, and I will be doing that on my weekly news rant. But for now, sit back and enjoy as I welcome to the podcast Silenoz of Dimmu Borgir. So I want to start with the most pressing and obvious news. Let me set the scene with my personal experience of your performance at the Rockefeller Center at Inferno. So I have been to probably at this point 800 shows plus over the course of my 44 years, and I have heard some pretty loud pops in that time. Like some of the loudest that come to mind, when Slayer did Rain in Blood as their encore, the crowd in the Astoria went fucking ballistic. When Down played the opening bars to Dazed and Confused, it was like the fucking, also in the Astoria, it was like the Astoria's foundations were going to crack. When you guys marched out Vortex, Mistus, and Chodolv on that stage. That is one of the loudest audience reactions I have ever heard in my entire life. And I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Talk to me about what it felt like being on stage, seeing that response, getting that energy from the crowd.
Well, to be honest with you, I can't really remember if it was that loud because I was too much in my own head on stage, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, but when you have a lot of stuff on stage at Rockefeller, it's the actual stage plot is not really that big after all. I remember growing up as a kid, Rockefeller was a huge place to play, and then, by all means, it's a decent sized club. But when you have to fit all that equipment, people going on and off stage, and there's this and that everywhere. It's you just have to be careful where you step. So I was more focused on that, to be honest, than anything else.
Yeah. Just on that topic, I know when we bumped into each other in the foyer, you'd mentioned to Cheyenne that you weren't sure whether the backdrop was actually going to fit onto the stage, and it looked fucking amazing. How did you guys manage to get that in there, like to get all of, to get everything you needed to have up and displaying on stage?
Well, basically we didn't. So what you saw from the backdrop was probably 1/4 of it. But we managed to get the main pieces, the main scenery of it visible. That was the most important thing. So because we had like 2 pre-production days before this show, which was going to also serve as pre-production days for the rest of the summer shows. And so this backdrop is new, obviously, and it's going to come out in its full glory when we play the main slots at the festivals this summer. So really looking forward to that. It's a nice piece of artwork, and with the whole new stage setup, we obviously couldn't fit that inside Rockefeller, sadly, but it is what it is, and I think we weighed up for it with the songs, and of course our special guests that we haven't played with for 15 years now, something like that.
Who came up with the idea to have the guests come on? What kind of sparked that conversation?
No, I think that's been in the talks for a few years already. I mean, we already had Shodal play with us a couple of times last year in Beyond the Gates in Bergen, and he's done a stint with us previously before that as well. But so it was, we've been talking behind the scenes anyway, just being friendly, We've never been unfriendly, even though the split back in the day was probably, both sides could have handled it differently and better, of course. But when in the heat of the moment, that's what happens. And I think it's water under the bridge since many years ago already. So it's just, I think it was just a matter of time before we managed to get on stage and play a song together,
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, I think you're 47, 48 years old now. You change so much. I think, especially with my experience with men in particular, I think that period between 20 and in my experience up to about 35, I think post 35, you are a completely different person to what you were when you were 20. And that has an impact on how you manage your relationships, friendships, whatever the case may be. I would imagine whenever I look at people that almost have this expectation that people in bands should be retroactively auditing everything that they said in their 30s or in their 20s and apologizing for anything that, in 2024 is considered offensive, I just shake my head. I'm like,
it's offensive to apologize.
When you're 20 years old, you realize the coolest thing for you is to piss somebody off. It's like, especially if you're doing the kind of music that you guys are making. Especially, I mean, I think if you're an artist generally, you want to provoke. Like that's what you set out to do at that, especially at that young age.
Yeah, and I think that's also just part of your personality. And as you grow up, you lean towards a certain personality. In my eyes, anyway. And but like you said, you changed, and I'm not the same person as I was 2 days ago. It's always a ongoing thing, isn't it? So no, but it's always good to to change. That's constant change. That's what makes you, I think, and to be looking back at what you've done as a learning process. Not as a bunch of mistakes or whatever. It's all a learning process.
Yeah, if you're not learning, you're not living. And I do very much. I am very much a front-facing person. Like, I don't believe the solution is in the rear view. You've got lessons that you can apply from the rear view, but if you're constantly looking back and berating yourself over things that you should have done differently, I mean, it's fucking idiotic.
Yeah, you're just stuck in a loop then,
Yeah. 100%. But I mean, you guys are, I think, at an especially poignant time now of Dimmu Borgir's existence, and I'm sure individually it means a lot to you as well. I mean, officially, what, 30 years or 31 years now?
31 years now, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what does it feel like looking back at that? Again, not thinking, I should have done this and this and this differently, but just thinking about it in terms of legacy and in terms of where the band are now versus what your aspirations might have been for the band when you started it.
Well, I think most bands don't start out with any particular ambitions. They start out because they want to jam and play songs together, be creative together, and then see how that goes. So when you start out as a band, you don't really know your position within that frame until it takes a few years, right? And like with anything else, basically. So that's something that is in the back of my mind since day one, basically. You try and still position yourself within that framework and do the best out of your spot, basically. Take advantage of your the good sides of your creative sides, and then still keep the negative sides here to be aware of them, but try not to indulge too much in that scenery.
Yeah. I mean, you are. I mentioned to you when we bumped into each other, the first time I met you was 2003, and I can honestly say, in terms of down to earth, I was fucking petrified of that conversation. And so, I was 23 years old. I remember going to the Royal Lancaster Hotel in London with my little dictaphone, my Dying Fetus T-shirt. Firstly, they didn't want to let me into the hotel. And secondly, finally the Nuclear Blast PR person let me in at the time. But, it was like Dimmu Borgir was the biggest band that I'd ever spoken to up to that point. And you were super cool then, you're super cool now. What is it that keeps your feet on the ground? Because I often think about this from the perspective of somebody who's in a band. Like, when we go back to just using Rockefeller as an example, like, you're on a band and there's that level of positive energy and adoration coming from an audience for you. I think people underestimate how difficult it is to keep yourself grounded when that is what's kind of swirling around you when you're on stage, when you're putting out music, and when you're doing something in the public eye the way that you do.
I think for me personally, anyway, it's probably because I come from. I grew up in the countryside. I'm in a Scandinavian country, and there's no reason to be, thinking in fames and fortunes and all that Hollywood stuff. Plus, we're playing a type of music that doesn't really have anything to do with that type of attitude or anything like that. So, and also looking back when I was a kid and looking to my heroes and idols and whatnot, and then later meeting many of them, and they show a down-to-earth appreciation attitude that just confirms that just be who you are. I mean, some people can't help themselves. Some people are just assholes. That's the way it is. But I think for the most part, especially within the metal and rock and that type of scene, there's no room or reason for that stuff.
Yeah. So when you say Scandinavian countryside, are you talking like farm boy? Did you grow up in a
Yeah. I grew up on a farm. Yeah.
was it a working farm that you grew up on?
It was, but I was, I guess I was around 3 years old when we shipped off the last few animals to the slaughterhouse. So I remember that as a 3-year-old, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was no, you weren't quite in the thick of things. Like, I mean, so I'm from South Africa, as you might have picked up from the accent, and I've recently been watching a documentary about the Springbok rugby team in 2023, and one of the things that they show is like all the guys that are in the playing rugby in the front row, they all come from farms, and they kind of stress how that hard work, that work ethic that's instilled in them there is kind of why they're successful as professional athletes today. But again, I think most people that live in cities or grew up in cities, they have no fucking idea what it's like living on a farm and working on a farm. Like if you're a kid growing up on a farm, part of the reason why the boys are so fucking strong is because they're literally working physically all the time.
Yeah, you're used to getting dirt on your nails, and you're used to, getting up early in the morning is normal, maybe have a nap in the evening is normal, and then you work until as long as you can go, and I think that was to see my grandfather and my father do that really also helped me, to attribute to some of those things for sure. So that's why I like to work when I work, and when I rest, I rest.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean, we're doing this relatively early in the morning. Most metal guys I know, they're like, you're lucky if you get them awake at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Right. You kind of still seem to have a bit of that maybe like biological programming, you could call it, instilled in you. Is that fair to say?
I guess you can say that. Within the band, we're all different. Some guys like to, as you say, take it slow and are not operable until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm the other way around. So, like for instance, when we're in the studio, I'm usually the first one to start with guitars in the morning, because the producer, or the engineer, he's ready by 8 o'clock. No one else is ready by 8 o'clock but me. So that's how it's been working until now, anyway. So I just like to get up early in the morning, get a lot of stuff done out of the way, and then relax in the evening.
I'm with you. I'm up at 5:10 every single day. I need that kind of acclimatization in my own head. I can't just, like you talk to certain people and they're like, oh, I just roll out of bed at, whatever o'clock, and then, the day starts. And I wake up, feed the animals, have coffee, sit and read the news. Then I get out of bed at about 6 and I get ready and I go to the gym. But I have to have that build up, and I have to wake up early, because if I wake up at 11 o'clock, I almost instantly feel like the day is completely wrecked.
Exactly. That's how it is for me as well. And when we played Rockefeller, our stage time was 11:30. So by the time it came to 9 o'clock, I was like, oh, I need a nap. How am I supposed to do this? So, but it went fine. Once you get into the mood, it's fairly easy to get going, and coming off stage, of course, you have more energy and adrenaline, at least for me, than I had before I go on stage, because it just pumps you up, right? So it's hard to settle down until it's maybe 4 or 5 in the morning,
You looked like you were enjoying the shit out of the experience. I mean, you could almost, like I could almost detect a grin on your face when you were playing.
It was highly enjoyable, I have to say. It was during our stints at Inferno Festival over the years. This was probably one of the better ones, if not the best one, in terms of performance, sound for us on stage, and maybe also for the audience. We had a new front of house guy that's going to be with us now. He's been with us previously on monitors, but he's actually a front of house guy. So this was his baptism of fire for us, basically. So so far there hasn't been any negative things about the sound, which I'm really happy about, because our sound picture in a live setting, and especially if it's a festival where you don't really get to have a proper sound check and stuff like that, it could be tricky. It's very challenging. So I'm glad that most of that went as good as it could, and I'm really, really happy about the performance, and the audience in itself was amazing.
Well, again, if I kind of relay my own experience, I think some of the things that I took away from that show, one, when Vortex came on, in the back of my mind, I'm starting to like go through, okay, what song are they going to play with him? And one of my favorite Dimmu Borgir songs is the Insight and the Catharsis. So, but I was immediately like, okay, maybe they'll do that. And I was like, probably not. It's going to be something of puritanical euphoric misanthropy or whatever the case would be. And when you started that, I grabbed my fiance. I'm like, oh my God, just listen to what is about to happen. Yeah. She is as non-metal as it gets. Like, I think before she met me, she accidentally heard like 3 bars of a fucking Bon Jovi song, and that's the closest that she got to metal. And even she, after that show, was like, that was fucking impressive. Like she could tell that was something special. But for me, when the Insight and the Catharsis, when you guys did that, it took me back to discovering you guys back on Stormblast, like just that excitement and that joy that you have as a teenager when you're discovering, bands, and, there was a real thrill to the music scene at that stage that I think there's a different thrill to it now, because I do personally think that the scene is extremely healthy. But there was something very, very special too. I mean, everyone who was there knows it. There was something extremely special about the early and mid 90s. But I mean, I couldn't give you a bigger compliment than that. It completely made me feel like I was 15, 16 years old again.
Yeah, that's a great compliment, and I appreciate that. And it was the same for us too. Every time you play a show, when you play certain songs or all of the songs, to me, it takes me back to when we were creating the song and recording the song and performing the song back in the day. And I try not to focus on it too much on stage, obviously, because once you start thinking too much, that's when you do mistakes, right? So you have to keep zoning in at all times. But it's when you play a show, it's basically, for us now, it's half of the set pretty much says itself. Basically, it's kind of like a luxury problem to have so many albums and songs to choose from, and there's a certain amount of it that the audience obviously expect you to play and perform naturally, and you only have 75 to 90 minutes, to do that show. And some of the songs we have are also very long, so it's. It's difficult and challenging to find a set list that will, first of all, fit into those minutes, because we want to add some elements, like some extra intros here and there, to make it a full performance, not just song, just make it a full circle out of it. So, but no, it was really a good thing to have the Inferno Fest as some kind of like a pointer for the rest of the summer, basically, and I think the audience will like what we have to offer.
This was my first trip to Norway, actually, and I've mentioned this on previous episodes, but I think one of the things I was most impressed with and that I found most endearing about visiting Oslo and going to Inferno, there seems to be, from my perspective, a real appreciation in Norway for its musical legacy and for for black metal's role in the Norwegian musical culture. I've bemoaned this many times, but in the UK, whether it's Black Sabbath or Motorhead or Venom or Killing Joke, I mean, the average person doesn't give a fuck. They have no conceivable idea of the impact those bands had, the influence that they continue to have. There's no pride in it. Completely the opposite from my experience and my observation in Norway. Is that something that, as an artist, somebody living, I mean, you still live in Norway, do you feel it the same way that I've just kind of described it there?
Yeah, kind of, and I think it's good that way. You know, maybe it's supposed to be that way. I remember back in the day, it was you kind of seek for attention subconsciously or consciously. It doesn't matter, but you want to provoke and you get the attention, and then you feel like, nah, I don't like the attention. So it's like a give and take type of thing. But yeah, Norway is obviously a small country, and to suddenly play a tour in South America, for instance, you play for thousands and thousands of people, and then 2 days later you're coming home and you're shoveling snow, and you talk to the neighbor, and the neighbor is like totally unaware of what you're doing, and it's like, oh, so how was your week? And I'm like, just shoveling snow, like, yeah, pretty good actually.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a good thing that that metal and black metal and extreme music is the way it is, and it's not mainstream. It's not supposed to be mainstream, and but I think maybe back in the day we wondered why are we not getting the attention that the big names in pop and rock and stuff gets, but I'm glad we don't, because it's something special, and it's something for particularly interested people, and that's what makes it magical in my eyes.
You guys do have. I mean, of almost every. Well, let's not even say black metal, extreme metal. Of every extreme metal band that I've ever come across, you guys have one of the largest global reaches that I've ever seen in my life. And I'll tell you where that really hit home for me. In 2012, I was in Cape Town, and I was attending a local MMA event. They have a promotion there called EFC Africa, which is kind of like I don't want to call them a ripoff of the UFC. It's because they're quite successful in their own right, and they've had some good fighters there, and their shows are cool. This dude walks out. I think his name was Francis Habalala. He's from the People's Republic of the Congo, and he's this fucking chiseled, dark as night African Adonis. And first thing, almost like subconsciously in my mind, I'm like, oh, you kind of expecting hip hop to be playing over the PA, and I suddenly, I remember distinctly, I hear, "We will do away with your kind." I'm like, what the fuck? And he's playing Puritania as his walk-in song, and I was like, holy shit. Like a guy from the Congo that looks like he would never in a million years pay any attention to any fucking metal, let alone black metal, and this is his walkout song. That to me was when I really realized, I was like Dimmu Borgir is on a, they operate on a very different level.
Yeah, I mean, we have ever since the late 90s, early 2000s, we've been able to penetrate into certain areas where we probably wouldn't expect us to happen. It's so when I hear stories like that, it just confirms that we are all over the place, and that in itself is great as an inspiration. You reach out to certain areas and certain people that you probably wouldn't expect it to. But I think that's also what makes it special, because these people they have searched for it themselves, and yeah, it's special for sure.
Well, dude, I mean, that's my story when it comes to Dimmu Borgir. I Stormblast. I discovered you guys through Stormblast. And I discovered that because there was a track on a Nuclear Blast soundcheck CD. Like you remember, you always used to get those catalogs that came out, and they would send you the soundcheck CD, like
right, yeah.
And there was a track of Stormblast on there, and that was kind of in my formative years of getting into black metal in any case. So it was absolutely right up my street. And then Enthroned Darkness Triumphant came out, and that just blew up. It was for a while it was the biggest, certainly from my vantage point, which was quite geographically limited. It was the biggest thing going. So I want to ask you, actually, on that note, when you guys were, because you kind of came from really from the old guard, right? I know you weren't involved in all of the controversy and all of that shit, but like, where were you around the beginnings of the scene, 92, 93? I mean, you guys were already, I know you guys started 93, so it's not like you're a Johnny-come-lately 96, 97 year band.
No, we were in the midst of the heat of it, I guess you can say. But we managed to focus on the music, thankfully. And we were totally immersed in our own little world. And I think that's...
There was never any temptation for you to go burn a church down.
No, it wasn't. Strangely enough,
like looking at the lighter and the gasoline, but no. We got band practice, god damn it.
Yeah, no, we had a fair share run-in with the police as well. And I remember back in 92, 93, the cops could stop you on the street just for you wearing black and leather. Spikes.
Jesus, seriously?
Yeah. And back then we were still teenagers, so you're not even 18 years old, which is the legal limit here. So that's some weird memories from back in the day, Norway or Oslo had also somewhat of a goth scene, and obviously police and authorities and stuff, they couldn't make the difference between us black male people and the goth. So everybody in black got stopped, So that was some weird times, but I'm glad that we managed to focus on the music and live in our own little world and create from there, I think that's been one of our strongest features as a band and as people, is that we haven't given two shits about what people have thought of us. You
managed to tune out a lot of, because this was going to be my question, which is why I brought this up. When you guys were getting bigger, like when Enthroned Darkness Triumphant was getting bigger, and you successively with every record, that your profile is increased, you've kind of leveled up your popularity. Did you ever get any, or did you, you must have gotten some degree of resentment from certain folks within the scene?
Oh yeah, ever since the beginning, because we've already felt like an outsider or an underdog, so to speak, because we started really early on incorporating keyboards, more than other bands at the time. I think other bands at the time probably used keyboards as an overlay or like some effects or whatever, but we started incorporating that into the writing process fairly early on, and that of course was not looked upon nicely from certain people, but I think that just gave us an extra boost and an extra fire to build further on. So we always looked upon ourselves as an underdog, an outsider, but still taking pride in coming from an origin of where there's extremity and the black metal movement, so to speak, and we still have a lot of black metal in our music, maybe more camouflaged as the years go on, but it's still there at the core, at the bottom, and that's
the interesting thing to me. I would probably place a bet, because I'm not going to get you to name names and start beefs on a podcast, but I would be willing to place a healthy bet that a lot of the bands or a lot of the individuals at least who were resentful of you guys using more keyboards, doing the things that you guys were doing, expanding your sound, possibly quite a few of them aren't making music anywhere near as extreme as the stuff you guys are doing nowadays.
No, plus they might be doing something completely different than music altogether. So that's something that
read into that what you will.
Yeah. But it, something that's worth working for, fighting for, is that gives you an extra cream on top of the cake at the end, because you sacrifice physical, mental health, family, anything to do what you do. And I think that's also something that separates us from a lot of other artists. Not only thinking about metal or black metal in general, but artists in general, is that you have to be willing to sacrifice, walk the plank, and there's no parachute, and you just have to take that leap. Otherwise, having a plan B is another way of having a comfort zone, and that's not ever going to work if your goal is to focus on music and your art.
Mm. It's funny you say about the plan B. There's a I think I heard Ice-T say this once. It's like, if you want to buy a Ferrari but you just can't afford it, he said, go ahead and buy it, because you're going to realize how quickly you'll find a way to afford it. It's like it's like taking that safety cushion away from yourself. But like, there was never, like, when did the idea of kind of leveling up the keyboards and the atmosphere and going fully orchestral, when did that vision start to materialize for you? Because my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of that has been driven by you in the band, correct?
Yeah, of course. I think the first hint of the orchestral thing, and if that would be a possible thing, was in '99. When we were supposed to, or we actually did perform at the Norwegian Grammys, and we were supposed to play with a live orchestra, but they bailed in the last minute. So we had that thing going, and we knew that, this song is going to sound really great with proper orchestrated instrument. And but that didn't happen, but we still had the tape, and I think back then it was like, you know what, the leap from us being symphonic and epic and orchestral on albums to putting it into live is not that far-fetched. It could be even a seamless happening. And so that's when we figured we should incorporate a smaller orchestra for the Puritanical album in the studio, and that transition was fairly easy, and it was kind of the little tiny start of utilizing proper orchestra.
It's about, I think, 34 musicians that you worked with for that, if I'm not mistaken.
For the Puritanical, it was a more chamber orchestra, and you might be thinking of the Death Coat album, because that's when we utilized an orchestra from Prague, and that's when it really started to open up properly. Some of the parts were intended with orchestra in mind, so we had help again from Gauto Storos, who transcribed some of our parts into orchestral the way he does it, and that he is amazing when it comes to that. So working with him, making it sound the way it sound, I don't think we could have done that with a different director, so to speak. You have other bands that have done orchestra on their music, and some have worked fairly okay, some hasn't really worked. I'm not going to mention names, but it's our music is orchestral from the beginning in many of the passages and parts of the songs. So for us, it's not a big difference. It fits. But if you have a more regular thrash band or heavy metal band suddenly going to incorporate orchestra, then you have to be really careful with how you approach that. Because the music in itself has not been written for that purpose. So that can be challenging. But if you work with the right directors and the right instances, it could be done fairly good.
Yeah. I would say, firstly, you guys, I think, you're certainly one of the innovators of using orchestras. Secondly, I would say you and Septic Flesh are probably the two that have done it with the most class, but it's been the most naturally integrated into what you've done. Because, again, without naming any names, there's a little known thrash band that did it, and with many of those songs, exactly as you said, it sounded very tacked on. And it just doesn't work. I'm a big believer in letting the music be bombastic and layered when it needs to be layered, but equally you need to know when to pull the stick back and to give it space and to use less instruments, less tracks, which I think you guys have always been really, really good at doing. And which is why I think it sounds so well integrated into what you do, as opposed to, well, we're just going to have 50 people in the background just fucking wailing away, and we're going to do our own thing on top of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And like some bands in the past have done fairly great, like Deep Purple comes to mind. There's other bands as well, but for us, it's to take that leap and utilize a full orchestra wasn't. It sounds cocky, but it wasn't that big of a deal. It makes sense. It made totally sense. So I also remember when NRK and Cork approached us before the Abrahadabra album about a possibility of doing a show in Oslo.
That was the 2011 show, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And but while we were finishing up or writing, I would say maybe 70% of the album was already kind of written. We had a sit down with them, and we came to agreement that okay, well let's do more out of it. Not only the show, but why not do a preemptive strike and have the Cork Orchestra perform with us on the album first. Mm. So when we went ahead and managed to do that, that really opened up the full orchestra shebang on that album, and we had this amazing show to look forward to, and we knew it was going to be a special happening for sure. And it's not something that we would probably maybe ever be able to do again. Who knows, but. That was something really special as well, to have Cork first perform with you on the album and then live on stage in a concert setting later on. And Cork is also one of the orchestras in Europe, the most renowned orchestras in Europe. And I remember when we started tracking for the album, a lot of them were like, "Oh, we're so happy and proud to be part of this because this is not usually what we get to do, and this is exciting for us. This is, big for them, and that's amazing."
Yeah, so I'm always curious about this because my mom was a music teacher. I've been around, her teaching the piano, but she was also involved in playing with orchestras and conducting choirs and all sorts of stuff like that. And I know that it's a very, very complex thing to do. Like, I've sometimes she does pretend a little like the music I listen to is basically the equivalent of me being a drug addict. So she just ignores that part of every single thing that I do. But when I have managed to get through to her and play her something, she's always been with you guys or with Septic Flesh, like super impressed with like there's a lot going on there, and that is incredibly difficult and complex and challenging to be able to pull off as a musician. Have you got any kind of musical classical training in your background, like your musical upbringing? What does that look like?
Not a lot. My mom's mother played the guitar a little bit. My grandfather on my father's side, he played the tuba a little bit. But besides that, not much. So my first proper introduction to actually playing the instrument was some friends of mine needed someone to play the bass for a school happening, a school show or whatever, and the guy who was supposed to play bass didn't want to do it, so they asked me because they knew I was into metal and rock and stuff, and I think there was 2 or 3, 4 songs maybe that we were supposed to play, so I had to learn that on bass in a few days actually, and and that
was you picking up an instrument for the first time.
For the first time, yeah. So if I remember correctly, it was Living After Midnight and Johnny Be Good. I think there was a Metallica song in there, and yeah, so that was my baptism right there on the spot, basically.
And you just took to it naturally?
Yeah, pretty much. Obviously, simplified version of the bass lines, but that's when I really felt that, wow, this is something that I can do, you know, because I had the beat, I could follow the timing, all that stuff. That was kind of probably in my blood ever since I started listening to music back in the early 80s, you know. So that was already there. It's just that to get the fingers going where they were supposed to. So that was nice introduction just to be thrown into it, and hey, learn this and you play it like this, blah 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 blah, and yeah, it worked. So
I'm about to say you would have taken a very much a Cliff Williams approach to that bass playing.
I can assure you I did.
I mean, I'm not when I say that, I'm not hating on Cliff Williams.
Oh, absolutely.
He is fucking brilliant.
That's the thing about people, taking AC/DC, for instance, everybody can play that type of drums. Everyone can play that type of bass or that type of guitar. And no, not everyone can do that with that feel and that schwung and that. No. That's, because it's in the simplicity, and to make the so-called simple things sound good and have that gung over it. It's not that as easy as people think, No,
it's about creating and expressing that feel that they're able to do. And rest in peace, Malcolm Young. To me, like that dude, the way that he can like place an accent on something that Angus, or we used to be able to place an accent on something that Angus was doing. It's fucking incredible. It's incredible, and you will never be able to recreate it. It's exactly the same, slightly different, but it's a similar principle. Dimebag Darrell, Vinnie Paul, the connection those two guys had, no fucking chance will anyone ever be able to recreate that. You can play the technical notes and beats, everything could be note perfect. It's the feel that's the thing that makes the difference.
Totally agree.
No. Getting back to the orchestra, to what degree do you get involved in managing all of the personalities that come with doing that? Because that's always the thing that I think about. Like whenever I've considered what you guys are doing, I always think to myself, kind of that's not, the saying is more money, more problems. Like more people, more problems. It's like, and there's a lot of fucking people to consider in that whole dynamic, right? Yeah.
That's also why we have worked with Gaute Storås, because he's great in amplifying the parts with the different instruments, and also there's choirs involved here as well, which needs conducting. So there's so many levels and layers to take into consideration, and it's a lot of work. People have no clue, the work we do with the basic and getting the fundamentals of the songs done. That's work in itself, but you always have to keep in mind what parts and passages that would go with an orchestral stuff, or if we're just going to keep it with keyboards, simple or whatever, So that's something that we learned over the years, that when we want the music to be, let's say, a bit more simplified with guitars and drums, that's when it's room for the epic stuff and to get the orchestra and choir to do their thing. And then if it's more guitar based or something, then we pull that back, So it's nice way of trying to figure out how you want the dynamics to play. And as you write the songs too, you kind of, you live with the songs, even, you make them, you record them in the studio, and then you play them live. So there's like kind of 3 different settings that you live the songs. And sometimes you get maybe a bit tired of playing them and whatever, but once you look back to what you accomplished, and so much stuff time and energy that we put into it, then it's just you know why it's sounding the way it sounds, you know. So yeah.
One thing that I think a lot of folks also don't necessarily always give you guys the credit for that you should be getting, you know, and again, maybe that's the mindset of, of the music a lot of us got into was music that was very badly recorded. But I mean, the only way you can accommodate the number of tracks and the number of players and the dynamics that you guys do is by having exceptionally well recorded music. And Ionian is a great example. You know, I think like I'm a massive audio nut. Like, yeah, I'm going to be going to the Munich high-end hi-fi show in May. Like, for me, 2 days worth of listening to $1 million plus hi-fis is the fucking best gift you could give me, even if it means I have to listen to, Fleetwood Mac over and over again. But there's a couple of things that you guys do that I always use to test anything that I'm going to do at my house, or if I can convince somebody at one of those shows to play a song. And I think it's Council of Wolves and Snakes. There's kind of a changeover where the song picks up speed. And I'll tell you, all but the very, very best hi-fi equipment completely fucks that up. It sounds like it's getting discombobulated is the right word.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, talk me through the complexity of the recording process when you guys do what you do at the scale that you do, because I think people don't necessarily realize just how different it is, or how different the approach has to be to pull it off the way that you guys do.
No, well, obviously there's the writing process, and then there's also finalizing the demo for each song. We try and do it as close to the actual studio recording as we can in our own home studios, and that means drums, bass, pretty much 4 rhythm guitars, then lead guitars, fill guitars, so many layers of keyboards, depending on what type of song it is, obviously, and vocals, and then solos on top. So we try and finalize the song as a demo before we go into the studio, and then we recreate the whole song, starting with drums and guitars and bass and all that thing one more time, but then with obviously a professional engineer and producer at the helm helping us out to achieve that sound picture that we want. And what we have in mind from the beginning is basically to have try and get us a huge and punchy and great sound as possible. There's no final answer for that, because even if you recreate the song in the studio, re-record it from how it was at the demo stage, it changes a bit, and it's never done fully until it's mastered in the studio, basically. So that there's always time for some changes here and there, but basically the structure of the song stays the same, and we like to be really well prepared that way, because it's easier to just, if you're a bit unsure of certain things, you can go back to the demo version and you can get a feel of where you want to go, basically. And I remember when we were recording the previous album with Jens Bogren, he said it himself, he was really impressed that we were so well prepared with the way we had done the demos and stuff, and we knew what we wanted. We always know what we want, especially what we don't want. So taking that out of the equation, then that helps a lot. So, but there's a lot of work, and I think obviously the fans in particular, they why does it take you so long between each albums? And it's like, well, obviously we would be the first one to say that we would like to have an album out sooner than later, but we cannot compromise on any level anywhere. And if that means it takes us some extra time to finish it, then so be it. I think it's always going to be worth it in the end. And it's not like the 70s anymore, where bands were recording 2 albums a year, Yeah. We have never been that anyway, but we take good time to finish a song, and it's also good part of the songwriting. It's something that another thing people forget is that is also to be away from your music, to be away from your art, to then delve back into it and see it with fresh ears and eyes, and come up with changes that way. That's just as important, to leave it be for maybe weeks or even months, for that matter. Certain songs or certain parts of songs, just leave it and then take it back in, and then totally listen to it with fresh ears and eyes.
Yeah, good art, good music is like good barbecue. It's ready when it's ready.
Yeah.
So with everything that you've done in your career, that you've achieved over the last 31 years, what do you feel is kind of the next step, the next stone to turn over? What gets you out of bed at, after 31 years? Because, again, you guys have done more than 99.9% of every single band in the scene right now ever will. That's you are in the upper 0.1% in terms of success. So, and actually, I would imagine in terms of almost the audaciousness of what you guys have done as well with the orchestra, with the stage production, all of that sort of thing. What did you feel is still there for you to achieve?
I still think the hunger is the most important thing to achieve something that you're proud of and you feel accomplished, and that's every time we make a new song that goes into a new album, that's an accomplishment. That feeling of completing something, completing a circle. But we're already thinking about the next thing. That's how I think a lot of artists are, because at the end you never finish with things. You finish one part, or you finish a painting or a song and an album, but you still feel like, oh, let's start on scratch, let's start fresh with something new again. So in that sense, you never really finish. So and as you said, we don't have to do this. We do it because we still want to. And going back to, if we could release an album every year, every second year, that would definitely be better for the bank account. But that's not something that you can stand behind 100% then, because it's something you do just out of other needs. The artistic need has to be coming first.
I'm about to say you could definitely beef up the pension account or pension part with by putting out more records. But you've got other things that you do outside of Dimmu Borgir as well. Obviously, I know there's Insidious Disease. Have you got anything? Are there any plans afoot with Insidious Disease or with any other of your projects?
Yeah, actually, the new Insidious Disease album has been demoed, pretty much finished, demoed for a year already. But I don't know, but if you know already, but Russ Russell, our producer, he had some really serious health problems.
I was just about to say he has.
Yeah, we got put back a bit because of that, and of course we were like, when you're healthy, when you're ready, that's when we start. So there's no rush with the Insidious album in that sense. But it's ready to start recording from scratch in the studio, so we're just waiting to get the call from Russ when he feels he's healthy enough to do that.
Yeah. You also have the pleasure, and obviously in Insidious Disease, of playing with, in my view, like you talk about somebody with hunger and who is still able to, or still operates at a fucking, to me, just incredible level. That's Shane Embry. It's always been the mystery to me of how many bands the guys get to 50 years of age, 55 years of age, and the creativity of what they do just tails off. They're playing to a brand. There's nothing that's necessarily new or innovative or interesting that's coming from them. And Shane, just over the last couple of years, just nothing seems to slow down for him. He'll put out a One Napalm Death album that is magnificent, and then you go, okay, how can they push this any further? The next record, it's like, okay, you've managed to top yourself yet again. And he's got all of his other projects that he does too. So that must be, I could imagine that being particularly inspiring, even in terms of bringing back just ways of working, or just fire in the belly to Dimmu Borgir being around somebody like that.
Yeah, of course. It's but that he's a typical artist from my point of view. He's like always searching for something to top himself, and that's he as well doesn't have to do it if he doesn't want to, but he does it because that's his drive. That's it's the hunger, that's the only thing that can seemingly satisfy. So, and we're the same, and to be working with driven people is a real blessing, because it pushes yourself as well. And sometimes we all need to be pushed, and we all need to be told no, and get rid of all the yes people around you,
which I think is a leading contributor to a lot of those bands that I was alluding to just not sounding the way that they should anymore. They don't have anybody that sat with them in the studio that goes, that's not up to snuff. That's not up to the standards that you guys are, that you should be known for, that you are, or that is aligned to your legacy. It's
like you always strive for perfection, although perfection is unattainable in my eyes, but you still strive for it. And that's, and to have someone push you in that direction and tell you no when you should be told no is also a very good thing.
One other question I had for you, I've got two and then we'll wrap up. How deeply involved are you in the production side of the live performance? Because that is something that is, we spoke earlier about the backdrop, but I mean, it's something that you guys have refined and improved on, with every probably successive tour. The first time I saw you was in 2004 or 2005, I think. And it's based on what I saw there versus what I'm seeing now. I mean, it just physically the performance is better, but everything about the setup is better as well. How deeply involved do you get in pre-production, or is it you guys at a level now where it's outsourced?
No, it's basically me and Shagrat who does the administrative part of the band, has always done ever since the beginning, and we are directly involved with the smallest little thing, I guess you can say. So anything that comes down to the production, stage stuff, everything else has to be a thumbs up from us, otherwise it's not happening. We figured that's the only way to do it. It's like another thing too, which I think bands realize after a few years, is that it's only democracy up to a certain point. It works up to a certain point, but then the easy decisions, they're obviously easy to make, right? But the difficult decisions, someone still have to do those, and that's when maybe a lot of people shy away from, and then there's one or two people left to do those decisions, and that's always been Shagrat and myself. So, and I don't want to compare us to a band like, let's say, Kiss, for instance, but and no offense to Ace Frehley and Peter Criss, but do you think Kiss would be where they are today if Gene and Paul wasn't at the helm?
Yeah.
So that's how this operates, and that's the only way for it to move forward in that sense. Yeah.
If money were no object, how far would you push the live show? Would it be like Rammstein levels of production? Like where do you think you could take it to with Dimmu Borgir?
Well, I think that's a reasonable thing to say. Rammstein and beyond, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, if it was unlimited, then only the imagination is stopping you. But yeah, it's obviously the stage thing has always been part of the band, and it goes hand in hand with the music. And that's how I grew up, listening to those bands in the 80s. They had the music and the imagery to go hand in hand. And that's what really took your breath away and put you into this different world, and you just drifted off, and that's what you want to create. And obviously I don't mind going on stage with Insidious Disease in my jeans and just chunk out the riffs, but But with Dimmu, that's a world in itself, and I'm also really proud that it's hard for people to label us, to label our music. There's so many different stuff going on, and to not be able to be labeled is the greatest compliment.
And at the end of the day, and I think a lot of bands, they don't necessarily realize this. Certainly with a live, I would say you could make an argument about albums, but live especially, your job is to create an experience. And if the experience you create is boredom, in some ways it actually ruins the music at least for me. There are bands I've seen live that I found so boring I'd never listen to one of their albums ever again, because I kind of just created that connection between the two, and it's like, well, it's not for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, a band could have, if we were honest, Rammstein's musically, they got some very cool songs, but they're not the best band ever. They're not going to be, if they were just dudes in jeans on stage, fucking no one would listen to them.
Exactly.
And yet,
like you say, it's an experience. It's entertainment, and also you have to make sure that you are entertaining yourself as well. Because if the worst thing is to see a band be on stage because they have to, compared to that they want to. There's a huge difference there, and you can see through that very easily, I think. So it's an experience and entertainment. Final question: what is it about your relationship with Shagrath that works so well? Because you spoke about you guys being together since the beginning, and obviously there's been many story changes to the Dimmu Borgir lineup throughout the years, but you two have got a connection that has stayed strong through 3 decades plus, has led to a huge amount of success, and kind of seems to be the nucleus of what powers the band and keeps it going forward. What is it about that relationship and that friendship that works? I think it's this push-pull mechanism, and that we're both really driven, and we have a real passion for what we do, and we obviously have respect for each other, and although we think very differently in many ways, we also share the goal of that we want the best for each other, the best for the band, the best for the brand, and take it to the next level, both creatively and any other level, basically. So, and we figured out pretty early on too that you don't have to be best friends to be successful together in a band. I think another example for that is Paul and Gene. I think it's that's how it's works, and how it's been working over the years. And we sacrifice the same things to do what we do, and there's definitely something special. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are at. On the topic of Paul and Gene, that $330 million infusion into the pension that's gonna come in handy. Would you ever consider selling the rights to your music the way that they've done? I'm not never say never, but they're also on a different age than I am. So we'll see when that time comes. It depends, but for now, I think we're all gonna stick to our catalog and keep it close. Yeah. Brother, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. That was a massively fun conversation. Looking forward very much to whatever the future holds for you. And, seeing you guys again. I'm going to for sure be making Inferno an annual pilgrimage. So hopefully we bump into each other in person as well. I'm sure we'll bump into each other sooner than later. And, definitely. Thanks for the interview. Take care, brother. Bye. I will anoint and whisper wholeheartedly.
temple is assisted by pretenders to the throne. For I cannot enslave myself with imaginary words of salvation. Hypocrisy that surrounds my temple is assisted by pretenders to the throne. In wings of low purity signifies my chosen legacy. I was born in opposition, a contender to creation.
That was Chosen Legacy by Dimmu Borgir off their album In Sorte Diaboli. Massive thank you to Silenoz for his time. I had to play that song. It was one of the highlights of the show that they did at Inferno just a few weeks ago. And yeah, man, what a fucking great dude. I bumped into him and I was actually introduced to him when we bumped into him at Inferno, and spoke to him and mentioned that we'd met many years ago. And said, you know, it'd be great to have you back on the podcast. And yeah, lo and behold, responded to my email, and that brings us to our present point in time. I definitely would say this because I know I've been at times critical of Dimmu Borgir in the past, but that show that they did at Inferno completely reawoke the fan in me. And if you saw it, I think you will agree. I don't think there's a single person that left that venue not being absolutely blown away. Speaking of being a fan of something, as you know, I'm a rather large fan of the band Werewolves, to the point where I would go as far as to make the argument that they are pretty much the house band of Into the Necrosphere at this point. They have got a fucking brilliant album called Die For Us, being released on July the 19th, that contains possibly one of the greatest moments ever put to CD, vinyl, any format, frankly. You're going to know what it is when you hear it. It's very early on in the album. No spoilers, but I'm going to play you their brand new single off of the album Die For Us. This is We All Deserve to Be Slaves. A masterclass in performing top-tier death metal by three of the best people in the scene. The band, of course, Werewolves, the song We All Deserve to Be Slaves, and that was, or will be released as part of their album Die For Us on July the 19th, 2024. Like I said, keep your ears peeled early on in the album for the greatest thing you will hear in 2024, hands down. It almost guarantees them a spot at the very top of the venerated top 30 of 2024, which we'll get to early in 2025. Right now, my friends, if you run around your town center or the city streets where you live wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt yelling, "Down with capitalism," then it's time to hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
Alright, Legion, as always, metalstorm.net is our first destination. I've got my Camden Hells at the ready. The first headline grabbing my attention, Darkened have announced a new album. It says here, Swedish death metalers Darkened share the title track from their upcoming 2024 release, Defilers of the Light, out on June the 14th through Edged Circle Productions. Let's hear what it sounds like. We are starting off very strongly today indeed. That is superb. Absolutely superb. I mean, there's so much going on there in those first 72 seconds that we just listened to there. And I know we've just paused on something that I think was quite compelling in its own right. But I'm sitting here wondering how on earth I've slept on these guys. According to Metal Archives, they got, or this will be their third album. They put out their debut record, Kingdom of Decay, back in 2020, and then The Black Winter came out in 2022. Like I said, no idea how I didn't pay either of those much attention, but what I've heard here so far is fucking excellent. Love the groove. This is very much a case of brilliant execution. Like I said last week when we were, I can't remember who it was that we were listening to, but we were talking about, you know, bands doing or following a well-trodden path, you know, essentially going back to a blueprint that many bands have used, you know, probably for the last 3 to 4 decades, and used it very well, but just nailing it in executing it flawlessly. And I think these guys have done that. I mean, my only criticism, and it is really, really minor, is I would have liked to have heard a little more variety in the drumming. I think maybe the drumming, certainly the part that we heard, feels a little bit mechanical, you know, a bit sterile, I think. But that being said, I mean, it's not going to detract from the fact that this is definitely a top-notch, no doubt about it. This is a top-notch contender without a shadow of a doubt. Let's get back to it. Nice bit of melody there as well. And if you're into some old school shredding, you can get your fill on that song as well. So yeah, really, really like it. I've got to give a shout out to Edged Circle Productions as well, because they put out an album that I think was one of the sleeper hits of 2023. And I speak, of course, of Ekrom's Uten Nordgist Formedelsa. I spoke about it on the podcast, played them, and that band features none other than Tex Terror of the mighty Nocturnal Breed, and of course was introduced to me by my good buddy Swartalv. On that note, there's something cool, something very exciting brewing with Swartalv. He and I have been talking about it. I'm not going to share details just yet, but if you're an old school black metal fan, brace yourself, because you're not going to see this on any other channel, on any other podcast, anywhere. More to come as I can reveal more. Okay, next up, we've got Crypt Sermon, who are releasing a brand new album. It says here, Dark Descent Records will release Crypt Sermon's new album, The Stygian Rose, on June the 14th, 2024. As a teaser for that one, the band just released the second single from the album. It's called Glimmers in the Underworld, which you can check out below. I know I let that one run a lot longer than I normally do when I do the news rant, but it's because I was curious to know where it was going to go. Quite a lengthy instrumental intro there. Really like the production. I think that Brooks Wilson, their vocalist, sounds absolutely fucking badass. And just as a fun fact, he's also a member of the band Unrest, who are grindcore, so about as far removed from this as you can possibly get, at least in a metal context. But I'm picking up some very heavy Candlemass vibes, kind of particularly Nightfall, Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus era, but that is no bad thing because those albums are excellent, and so is the song. And also another shout out to Dark Descent Records. They put out Adversarial, who we spoke about on last week's episode of the podcast, a band that I really, really liked. And again, seem to be picking up some really, really good bands. I would hope that they listen to this podcast and pick up some of the bands I've been featuring on the Independent Act Spotlight, which again, I love doing. As a side note, I've always said this, the biggest and one of the biggest and best compliments that I could possibly get is if labels start listening to the podcast and start picking up some of those bands that I'm featuring. I personally think that they're all... I mean, I wouldn't feature them if I didn't think that they were a band that were worthy of being signed, or at least worthy of being paid attention to. So, yeah, if anyone from Dark Descent Records is listening, there's a fucking treasure trove of bands that you can sign to your label right now if you act fast enough. Let's get back to this one. I think that's going to earn the second top notch of the news rant thus far, and June is becoming more and more exciting as we go through this week's news headlines, as far as I'm concerned. While I look for the next one, just a comment about my trip to Germany. So next week we'll go through in detail about all the good stuff. As I said at the top of the podcast, Runa Skov is going to be my guest next week. Very different, and I'm going to stress that again. Very different to anything that I've done on this podcast before. Runa is not a metalhead at all, though he had some interesting nuggets that he shared with me about, being involved with and knowing people from, the old days of the Danish extreme metal scene, Conqueror, Dominus, etc. You guys always respond very positively when I talk about hi-fi. I love talking about it. For me, there's something that's really special about getting to listen to music on a very well-appointed system. So we're going to do the interview with Runa. Then I'm going to go through my favorite 6 test tracks from a extreme metal perspective. My favorite 6 test tracks from a non-metal perspective. And I'm going to give you guys a system update. So what I've got in my hi-fi rack right now, if you go way back in the archives, I have spoken about that twice before, but obviously things have moved on since then. The virus has progressively gotten more intense and more widespread, at least through my wallet. And then I'm also going to do some recommendations again on, what I would go out and buy if I had a limited amount of money and I wanted to start on something. But a comment on Germany. So I had a good time overall. The show was great. I saw some fucking incredible things. Got to hear, amongst other things, a speaker produced by a manufacturer in Japan. I can't quite remember their name. I did take photos of them. I think they're called EDT Audio or something like that. Just the speaker or the speakers per pair cost 811,000 euro. So not something that any of us will be buying with our disposable income at any point soon. I also, as you'll find out next week, I got to listen to a couple of songs, including Pneuma by Tool on the Griffin Audio reference system that they had on display there. And that reference system, if you add all the components together, totals it reaches a grand tally of $750,000. So, it's once again something that, most of us will only be able to dream of. But fuck, I can tell you, hearing... I'm not even the biggest Tool fan, but hearing that song on that system just gave me a lump in my throat like you wouldn't believe. It was fucking astonishing. Got to say, though, as much as I had fun at the high-end show, what's not so fun for the second time in succession is dealing with the nitwits at passport control at Munich airport. So I spoke to you guys last time about this. Nearly getting arrested, being taken to the interrogation room and everything. This time round, I had made sure that was to be avoided. I's were dotted, T's were crossed when it came to getting my visa, everything in order. So I get to the front, I think this is going to be fucking easy. Get to the front, the woman goes, "Why are you here?" And I say, I'm here to attend the Munich high-end hi-fi show. She says, "What's that?" I said, "It's a trade show for high-end audio systems. Have you got a letter of invitation?" No, it's a public event which will be attended by tens of thousands of people. No, I don't have a letter of invitation. I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't have said, of all the 10,000 people, 12,000, how many people attend? I think it's more than that. Let's just make an exception. There's one man we need there, and that's Jackie from Into the Necrosphere. The irony of this is, this fucking bureaucrat is questioning me or effectively pretending that she doesn't know what the hi-fi show is. 20 meters behind her, there is a massive digital billboard, and in big, bold letters, it's advertising Munich high-end hi-fi show 2024. Absolutely blew my mind. She then demanded to see my return ticket, which, of course, is easy to produce. But equally, I've been traveling from country to country now for 22 years. And if she went through my passports, which were there, she could see a storied track record of me actually entering and exiting countries within the limits of whatever, legal rights my visas afford me. After 22 years, I'm not suddenly going to decide, you know what, this is the moment. I'm gonna seize the day, and I'm gonna illegally enter Germany, and I'm gonna avail myself of their generous social benefit system. Fuck me. It pisses me off so much that I almost am put off from ever going again. I will go, but in the future. But it's just that the pain in the arse of having to deal with people like this just underlines once again why I have such an aversion to anything to do with the government. Because anything that the government gets involved in is a fuck up. Because they hire people that are like this. But yeah, overall, outside of that, food in Munich I don't think was all that great. There was a couple of okay restaurants, but nothing like Norway. The food in Norway was astounding. People in Norway I also found were a little friendlier, but it wasn't bad. The hotel, we stayed at the 4 Points in Sheraton. That's a 4-star hotel, same as the hub in Oslo, but you may as well be comparing sleeping out on the street in a cardboard box to sleeping in a decent place. It's it's a bit fucking septic in comparison to what I had enjoyed when I was in Norway. But still, if you can go, strongly would suggest that you do. Or if you're in the US, I know in Chicago they do a hi-fi show called Exponer once a year, which is apparently pretty amazing, and I'm going to try and go to Exponer next year. So if that happens, I will let the American chapter of the Legion know, and hopefully I'll get to see a couple of you guys there. All right, we move on. Orange Goblin have a brand new song called Cemetery Rats. It says here, Stoner Metal Masters, Orange Goblin, are unveiling a lyric video for Cemetery Rats, the second single from their highly anticipated upcoming album Science Not Fiction, out on the 19th of July through Peaceful Records. Many of you have said that Ben Ward, the frontman for Orange Goblin, might make an excellent Into the Necrosphere guest. And the reason I have not asked him on the podcast yet is because I can't honestly count myself as the biggest Orange Goblin fan. Now, my opinion was formed from attending various shows where they were opening and just not really feeling it for whatever reason. I didn't know the music. I do think it's a little harder for a band to get over when you don't know their music than otherwise. And of course, I'm there to see the headliners or, whoever is main support. So generally speaking, you tend to be pretty dismissive towards those bands. It's rare that, a band who's in a, first support slot or second support slot is really going to blow me away. And I go, fuck it, they stole the show tonight. So, I say that as a preface to this because I haven't actually properly listened to any Orange Goblin music for eons. We're probably going back 10 to 15 years now. And thus, I'm gonna try and take an open mind here. But as I said, with the caveat, I've not always been the biggest fan of this band. But I'm gonna shut the fuck up. Let's get on with it. This is a little slow to get going, so I'm going to jump to the 3-minute 29-second mark. Not hating it though. I think it's got quite a cool, quite a nice atmosphere. Definitely, they certainly live up to the stoner metal tag they've been given. And it says here, speaking on the new track, frontman Ben Ward said, "You want metal, you've got metal. Cemetery Rats is an anthem for all the metalheads and rockers, the kids that society deems the weirdos and the freaks. Fuck society. This is a song for everyone that likes to hang out in the graveyard, listening to metal and loving life as the underdog. This is doom, thrash, and punk all rolled into one like the mighty Black Sabbath, colliding with classic-era Celtic Frost and Discharge. We are the heavy metal underground. We are the Cemetery Rats."
Back and we ascend as they control through the gates of hell to transcend this sea of foam with a frozen breath. Hear us calling. We have chosen death, graveyard crawling. We are a lost society, the freaks and fools are captured. But are we dead or are we free as we embrace the rapture? Born to a pack of ramming wolves, raised on the sound of cloven hooves. We are a nightmare coming flesh. We are the legions of undead. We feed the horrors that you dread. We breed the monsters in your head. Bloodlust and vampire bats. We are the Cemetery Rats. Forever laid to rest, return to Mother Earth, depart immortal God, and fed back to the world, to rise again someday, and take the kingdom back, decaying but reborn. We are the Cemetery Rats. Born to a pack of rabbit wolves, raised on the sound of cloven hooves. We are a nightmare coming flesh. We are the legions of undead. We feed the horrors that you dread. We breed the monsters in your head. Bloodlust and vampire bats. We are the Cemetery Rats.
I don't hate it. I'm not sure I'm ready to award it the greatest accolade in all of metal, but I don't hate it at all. What it reminds me of a little bit, and I mean this in a complimentary way, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the band Viking Skull. They've been around for a while. They hail from Corby in Northamptonshire in England. Their last album came out in 2016, but the one that I really liked was Doom, Gloom, Heartache and Whiskey, that they put out back in 2008. And the song off that record that I would strongly suggest you check out is a track called Hair of the Dog. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to give you guys a little taste of that right now. So hang fire for 2 seconds while I cue it up on YouTube, and then I'll give you a little taste. All right, got it. And as I said, a band who I've not necessarily been devoted to every single one of their records, but this was one that, for whatever reason, the timing was right. It just caught me at exactly the right time, and this particular song I think is fucking excellent. And for those of you not watching the music video, I can tell you that the music video contains ample-chested women vomiting, drinking and driving, and various other debauchery. But yeah, I fucking love it. And I like that Orange Goblin song as well. So looking forward to hearing what the rest of that record sounds like. And then who knows? I may well see if I can get Ben Ward on the podcast at some point. Okay, let's scroll down and see what else we want to listen to. Vulvodynia, My Countrymen, and one of the few bands to come from South Africa that I don't think is complete dog shit, are about to release a new record. It says here, South African deathcore band Vulvodynia are currently streaming the title track from their upcoming album Into Bani. The latter sees its official release on July 5th, 2024. Via Unique Leader Records. I really liked the last stuff that they put out. Of course, they had all of the drama with their frontman, I think, wanting to kill their guitarist or some such shit. But seems like they've managed to get over that now. So let's hear what the new single sounds like. Not bad at all. And I think that lead that's playing through, whether this was a chorus that we just heard, whatever that sequence that we just heard now, the lead that was playing there, I think, did a really nice job of elevating the song beyond just the normal, deathcore, chug chug, growl growl malarkey. But it's well produced, it's well played, definitely a cut above a lot of the fucking rubbish that sadly is spewed out by my homeland's music scene. And interesting fact, Entabani is the Zulu word for place of the mountain. And if I am not misreading these lyrics, they seem to be referring to the cultural practice of male adolescent initiation that takes place in the Zulu, like the Zulu community in South Africa. And for those of you that don't know what that involves, many things, but one of them is male circumcision, which, maybe if you're a little kid and you get circumcised, well, I say little kid, I don't know how old you are when you get circumcised in the Jewish community, but as a very young child, I can still maybe see that, but as a fucking 16, 17-year-old, you keep that knife away. I wouldn't put myself through that shit. They seem to suggest on the song's lyrics that many men have died from the practice, which I'm sure there has. I don't know. It's not something I've looked into to a huge degree. But not hating the song. Not the most brilliant thing I've ever heard either, but like I said, when you have to compare to the likes of fucking Dreams of Nightmares or other assorted shite that comes from South Africa, it's a big cut above that. Embryonic Autopsy have revealed a brand new single. It says here, Dripping in the Vaginal Nectar. The second single from the Embryonic Autopsy's upcoming album, Origins of the Deformed, featuring a guitar solo by 6 Feet Under's Jack Owen, has surfaced online. The Also band teamed up with Jason Madu and shot an official music video for the song. I mean, the press release sounds about as coherent as I expect the song is going to sound, with a fucking title like Dripping in the Vaginal Nectar. But I'm curious. I want to hear what this sounds like. Here's a fucking wild fact for you. The vocalist for this band is Tim King, who is also known by his main source of, I would assume, income, the bassist for the band Soil, who had a reasonably popular hit way back in the day, kind of at the tail end of nu metal. Not saying Soil were nu metal, but really at the tail end of nu metal, with a song called, I think it was called Halos. I mean, not the worst band. I mean, they also featured Sean Glass of Broken Hope. So they had like quite a pedigree, clearly, for guys from, you know, the extreme music scene. But yeah, this isn't bad. It's not. I think it's, if you're into this style of death metal, which, you know, I sometimes can be as well, I think you'll quite like this. It's not necessarily something that I'm going to run back to listening to immediately, but I don't hate it either. All right, next up we've got Cryptic Hatred, who have a new song out. It's called Homicidal Intentions, as part of their upcoming Internal Torment studio album. It says here, due out on July the 5th on Time to Kill Records. Finland-based death metal ensemble Cryptic Hatred disclose homicidal intentions. The Finnish death metal scene is, I think, in a fucking, like many other countries' death metal scenes, I should add too, in a golden age. I mean, we've had great bands on here like the Venial Verdict, you know, and just bands that are coming out of that particular scene delivering top tier work. I know there's a new Venial Verdict album in the pipeline as well, which I'm very excited about, but never heard of Cryptic Hatred before, but I'm expecting good things. Like, Finland's death metal scene has gotten to a point where, generally speaking, if they're putting out something and it's, you know, death metal and it's from Finland, I'm feeling I've got the feels, as they say, before I've even heard anything. Oh, that's fucking great. It's got just enough of a black metal tinge to really kind of take it to the next level, I think. Keeps it, it's not entirely blackened death metal. It's still very much, got it knows exactly what it is, but just those little black metal flourishes, I just think adds so much. And then everyone in the band is on form mostly. The vocals, I'm a bit undecided about. They're a little nondescript. I would almost feel like maybe old Tim King would do well to join this band. Because, I think his vocals were better. But if I compared, so we listened to Embryonic Autopsy, and what was the other band that we'd listened to? Let me just remind myself. Vulvodynia. Not quite the same music, but if I compared those three tracks, and I said which of those three would I listen to, and which one of those three's albums am I most excited about? It's Cryptic Hatred without a shadow of a doubt, and for good reason, I think. So let's go back to it. As a matter of fact, let's go back to a minute, because I went back in the screen and it started from scratch. So let's hear what the rest of the song sounds like. Excellent. Absolutely love it. And again, we're in black metal territory on that break that we just heard now, and I am here for it, without a shadow of a doubt. All right, let's check what else. Inter Arma are touring Europe. Marco of Stellarmaster Elite was telling me that I need to check out Inter Arma. I know that we listened to the first single they put out off that record on the news rant, and I wasn't convinced, but he believes that I will be if I give it proper time. Black Braid are going to be playing their first European tour in October. It says here, black metal act Black Braid proudly disclose a plan for their very first European tour. Booked in October 2024, this trek features support from fellow black metalers Lamp of Murmur and Swedish crust punk black metal unit Doteret. On Wings of Sacred Death tour begins on October the 11th in Nijmegen, I think is how you pronounce it, Netherlands, and concludes October the 24th in Copenhagen, Denmark. I won't be speaking to him, unfortunately, at Fortress, but looking forward to seeing him play. And, let's hope there's no more incidents. I still contend, though, exactly what I said when it happened and I spoke about it. I think people are making too big of a deal about it, and I think it's a symptom of the age we're in, that every single thing that everyone is doing is under such intense scrutiny. When we were all growing up listening to Guns N' Roses and Metallica and Pantera and whatnot, I don't think there was a show that went by, let alone a tour, where there wasn't some bust-up with security or some bust-up with a fan. Axl Rose famously threw a microphone at a fan and attacked him. Mike Patton pissed on the head of two security guards in the London Astoria. These are just things that happen. This has been part of music history for, fucking as long as I can remember. And when I say music history, I mean rock and roll music, metal music, what have you. As far back as I can remember, there's been shenanigans, antics, fueled by booze. The dude is young. He made a mistake. I think he owned up to it. maybe not quite as directly as everyone would like him to, but I mean, what is he supposed to do? Break up the band in an act of contrition? I kind of feel like a lot of times when, people are being keyboard warriors and demanding, reparations and, apologies from bands, and somebody comes and they give they give an apology or they give a statement, that's also never good enough for them. So it starts to get to the point where, if you think about Phil Anselmo, for example, I've posed this question previously to the people that keep saying he needs to do better. What is the guy supposed to do? Empty a fucking gun into his brain? I mean, is that when people are going to go, okay, well, I think he's finally shown that he's really sorry. I think people just need to get over themselves. No one in any of these bands owes you a fucking apology for anything. Unless you've been directly and personally wronged, I don't think any of these guys owe you jack shit. Okay, let's check out what else we've got. Forgotten Tomb are releasing their 11th album in July. Blackened Doom Metal Overlords Forgotten Tomb are ready to return with Night Floating. Their 11th studio album scheduled for release on July the 12th via Agonia Records. Mixed by Danielle Mandelli, Fernando. There's a list of people that I don't think anyone will know who they are. The album's title track has made its debut on streaming platforms. Let's hear what it sounds like. Fucking magnificent. Love it. Absolutely love it. I'm going to hold off getting too excited, though, because I clearly remember both of this band's previous records, Nihilistic Estrangement and We Owe You Nothing, got me super excited with the lead singles that they put out. The teasers definitely roped me in. The albums never quite delivered for me like I had hoped that they would, based on the quality of the single. But as a singular entity, as one song, this is fucking brilliant. This is a top notch for sure. And Agonia Records are another label that are having a good year. I mean, obviously they put out the latest Inquisition album, and I've got to tell you that has been getting a lot of airtime over at Smith HQ. I think it is. I said it at the time. I'm going to just repeat it again. I think it is easily the best thing that Inquisition has done, certainly since Bloodshed upon the Empyrean Altar upon the Celestial Zenith, but I would argue it's probably my second favorite Inquisition album overall. Bloodshed being number one. Bloodshed is also possibly one of my favorite black metal albums of all time, period. But after the mass disappointment that was Black Mass for a Mass Grave, this is just a fucking welcome return to form. I absolutely love it. And as I said, Forgotten Tomb, getting us, or certainly promising an awful lot with a song. Let's give it another 60 seconds. Excellent. Excellent stuff. All right, let's check out one more song and then we'll head over to Metal Injection. As a matter of fact, it looks like there's, like we've possibly exhausted most of what I would want to hear on here. Let's check this out, actually. Hell On, He with the Horse's Head track unleashed. It says here, the official release of Hell On's new record, Shaman, is getting closer. Before it hits the streets on May the 17th, the Ukraine Thrashers offer in listening another new track and preview titled He with the Horse's Head. Never heard of this band, but yeah, like I said, let's let it rip. All of the elements for a great song are there. I like that riff, like the production. I think there's muscle to the song. The vocalist sounds good, but his rhythm and his tempo and the way that he's delivering those lyrics it's just nowhere. It's 0 out of 10. I think the best thing that could possibly happen with this band is they're going to need somebody to coach the vocalist. Ideally, get Sam Bean in to do some coaching on how you turn extreme metal vocals into an additional hook, and this band would be fucking excellent. I like that ethnic element that they put in there as well. I think that sounds really, really cool. A little bit different. I was kind of expecting just, fairly typical thrash. This is anything but, which is a big plus. It's just the rhythm in the vocals, and that comes from somebody whose first language is clearly not English. You often find that in my experience. People whose first language isn't English, they falter when it comes to, how they inject rhythm, how they inject tempo in their vocals and in the lines that they're delivering. And yeah, it's just so off that it's almost disruptive. It almost takes you out of the song. At least it does me. I'm pedantic about a lot of things. I will admit freely. That's one thing I'm particularly pedantic about. Okay, let's check out Metal Injection as we close off for this week's installment of the News Rant. Let's check out what they say under their latest news. For fuck's sake, let's just check out the latest news bucket here. Al Jorgensen on ending Ministry. I'm just trying to wrap everything up with a nice little bow. We all know he's never stopping this band. The Ministry will end the day they carry Al Jorgensen off of the stage in a fucking casket. And I kind of respect him for it. I just wish that the guy wasn't so insistent on wrecking his legacy with the garbage that he's putting out now when he has a track record of such brilliance. I just have better things to do than listen to somebody whose lyric sheet basically reads like the headlines basically reads like quotes by Joe Scarborough and Rachel Maddow. There's another one here. These bands are the big four of new metal, according to you. Picture Year of Corn looking like complete and utter dorks. They also have Slipknot on here, Slip Shit, Limp Bizkit, also muck, although with Limp Bizkit they get given some reprieve because their show at Woodstock was fucking excellent, even though it led to mass violence. Well, I would say not led to, that's actually unfair. I personally think they got blamed for that unfairly. The stupidity of the organizers there is what led to the violence. But yeah, it was a fucking wild show. The most insane performance I've ever seen. You guys would have heard me reference it many times on the podcast. And then Stinkin' Park, a band which genuinely I would sooner drop an anvil on my feet than listen to willingly. How you don't include Deftones on this list, I don't know. Even more critically, how you don't include Static X on this list and say that Wisconsin Death Trip really was the only truly great record to ever be put out in the nu metal era by a nu metal band. It kind of indicates to me that the readers of Metal Injection, for the most part, are fucking idiots. Eloy Casagrande explains how he joined Slipknot and says that the band has new music in the works. You would hope if you are going to be hiring somebody of that caliber, you certainly are going to want to put him to work on more than just the stage. It says here, former Sepultura drummer Eloy Casagrande and Slipknot have joined forces for what may be the most potent version of Slipknot in a long time. I agree, based entirely on the fact that Eloy Casagrande is a champion's champion and a man's man. But how did the two parties come together? In a translated interview with Veja Sao Paulo, Casagrande said it all started in December 2023. The invitation came in December through their manager. He said he asked if I was interested in auditioning first. I accepted. Very surprised they auditioned him. You can see the guy's videos. He's fucking great. They asked me to record and send them some videos from right here in Brazil. Initially, there were 3 songs. Then they asked me for 3 more and asked if I had any plans to go to the United States, and was scheduled to perform there in January with my instrumental music project, Casagrande and Hannes. I'm sure I've mispronounced that. Anyway. So they moved my flight up a bit, and I spent 5 days in Palm Springs rehearsing with a full band. Then they asked me to extend my stay by another 5 days so we could record some things. Then they pumped me full of heroin to see if I could deal with their drug binges. No, of course I lied about that last bit. I think that was also part of the audition. They threw new ideas at me to see what my songwriting was like. They wanted to test me in every way. Casagrande said he was he was formally invited to join the band in February, but that the audition process was pretty brutal. Apparently he had to sign an NDA document. He said he's on good terms with both current Sepultura drummer and former Slipknot drummer, Jay Weinberg. As for the future of Casagrande, not. All he mentions is that there's some new stuff in the works. Still feel like he did the Sepultura guys dirty a little bit. But at the same time, as much as I have never quite taken the approach of, taking Max's side with everything that happened in the whole Slipknot debacle, the whole Sepultura Soulfly debacle, what I would say is, of everyone in the scene, the Sepultura guys should know about business more than anything else. And Eloy Casagrande is 33 years old. Why in the fuck is he going to retire now? Especially not when, it would be a crime for that dude not to be in a band. He's just too talented not to play in a band. All right, let's see what else. John Karabi, Horseshoes and Hand Grenades audiobook and paperback coming soon. I don't know how you do an audiobook of a tome composed entirely of crayon drawings. Kerry King, I lost 10 pounds, not even trying. That's called fucking early onset diabetes or something even worse, my friend. So get yourself checked out by the doctor. Rammstein launches Spring-Summer 2024 European Stadium Tour in Prague. Bit of a impasse that myself and DG reached on last week's interview as regards Till Lindemann of Rammstein. Now, I don't know, we didn't talk about it. I don't know what he uncovered in his investigations. But I did follow Colonel Kurtz, who's a woman who does some, pretty exhaustive investigative reporting on YouTube about cases like this. And she revealed an awful lot that suggested that that woman who had accused Till of wrongdoing was basically just full of it, which I was not surprised by. And the fact that she's disappeared and has never been heard from again, and that none of the, I don't believe the Berlin authorities, and trust me, the Germans, as we know from my experience at the passport control desk, the Germans are very thorough in their investigations, and the Lithuanian authorities haven't found a single thing. I can't see that there's any wrongdoing there, aside from the fact that the dude is probably a little bit weird. And he's weird to the point where I can see DG's point about maybe some of that being a little morally dubious. But no matter how morally dubious something is, if people are willingly engaging in something, whether it's, some polyamorous shit or whatever it is, it's not for me to judge. Whatever they want to do, they can do. Just don't make it my problem. Either way, I'm just glad I'm going to get to see Rammstein live again at some point. I was hoping to see them live this year, but there is just way too much going on. Of course, there's Fortress coming up in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going away for my wedding anniversary my pre-wedding anniversary on the weekend of the 4th of July. I'm actually getting married on the 18th of November. The reason why all of the Legion isn't invited is because it is going to be just the two of us in a very secluded hotel somewhere in the Lake District. But literally, when I say just the two of us, no friends, no family, no nothing. It's literally just going to be the two of us and Satan. So getting married out in the forest in a pentagram. But yeah, so that's happening, and then of course the end of the year will mark my my sabbatical to the motherland, which I'm fucking already looking forward to, and we're barely through May. All right, let's check out one more, and then we will move on. Judas Priest, Rob Halford, you've got to let young people find their own way in life. I also saw the other day that apparently he's a big fan of prayer, which I'm sure... In the climate we're in, I would gather that saying that he's a fan of prayer may potentially land worse than when he came out and said that he was gay. I still think that, whatever accusations people might have thrown at the metal scene about homophobia, the fact that he could come out, and I can't recall a single negative thing that was said towards him, in a good way. I don't mean that as a problem. I think it was good that it never happened. But the fact that no one seemed to give a shit, I think that tells you that those were some seriously overblown charges, unfairly thrown at the metal scene. I think. I have been in the scene for a long time now, and I've seen people of all shapes, colors, and sizes turn up at metal shows, and I have never ever seen one person treated with patent disrespect. I've never seen one person told that, you don't look like you belong in these parts. None of that shit. I just think the metal scene, for all of its flaws to the outside world, is a very, very accepting community of people. And I think in the main, it's all about whether or not you're a dickhead. If you're not an asshole, generally speaking, people are going to be nice to you. There's maybe in the last couple of years a bit of a split, a bit of a rift when it comes to people's political views. But I think that's more of a comment on the state of society as a whole than it is anything else. All right. There must be one last thing for us to look at here. Anthrax's Scott Ian says Kerry King made him look like a liar about Slayer's supposed final tour. Again, I don't know why he's taking that personally. If nothing makes him look like a liar more than the dirty deeds that they did on my man John Bush. Danny Filth on Cradle of Filth's collaboration with Ed Sheeran. It's very catchy, but it's very heavy at the same time. I expect something so cringeworthy that it makes a fucking Neil Breen movie look great. But we'll see. I've not been convinced by anything that Cradle of Filth have done, basically since Cruelty and the Beast. It says here, on the topic of when Cradle of Filth's collaboration with Sheeran will finally see the light of day, Danny said it was going on this upcoming Cradle of Filth record, but chances are, because we don't want to delay our record any longer than we can, It'll probably go on any longer than it can, I should say. It'll probably go on a special edition, and that is because Ed's taking a blackout this year. Totally no music output. And of course, you can't release it at the same time. His management were just like, you've got to appreciate you can't release your single at the same time as one of Ed's singles because it kind of defeats the purpose of it. Does it? I don't see Ed Sheeran's fans running to go, hey, I need to go check out that new Cradle of Filth single. I would actually suggest that releasing two at the same time is a fucking great idea. Because, you know, the normals are going to crowd around whatever dross he coughs up for his next single. And then at the same time, you release Cradle of Filth, which to the average person is going to be a bit of an oddity. You know, it'll be a bit of a curio, as they say. So I would personally, in my view, I would release both at the same time. Anyway, it's a great song anyway, and it just keeps people guessing a little bit longer, but it also shows that we're not using it as a vehicle for the record, which I was very keen to stress that, yeah, he's one of the biggest artists in the world, and yes, we've done a thing with him, and yes, everybody's very curious about it, but at the same time, I don't want it to overshadow what we're doing. Because it's not a novelty song, although the ideology behind it is very novelty, and I love the juxtaposition of the marriage of extremes, you know, like who the hell would do this? Well, us for a start. So I'm happy with this, and I'm happy with the fact that it gets released under its own stream. I mean, obviously everybody will make a big deal of this because it is what it is, but it kind of takes the onus of us making a meal of it. I think it's going to sound like dog shit, but I am very curious to hear it all the same. And when it does get released, friends, it will be rounded up for judgment, just like every other track that gets released right here on the News Rant. For now, though, I'm wrapping up for this week. Legion, time now for the saddest moment of the week. That moment when I have to say goodbye because another episode is in the bank. I will be back next week with Runa Skova of Griffin Audio. Like I mentioned at the top of the podcast, the Lamborghini of high-end hi-fi. What a fun conversation that was. Something totally different to what I've done on Into the Necrosphere, but I'm very excited to share with you my own journey into hi-fi and hopefully convince a couple of you guys to start some systems of your own. I'm fucking stunned, frankly, that more people in the metal scene aren't more into hi-fi. I know it could be reasonably pricey, but that's why I'm also going to make some recommendations on some decent systems that you can get for a reasonable amount of money. Lay off buying beer for 6 months and you'll be able to afford these systems. For now, though, I would like to say to all of you, first of all, thank you very much if you've checked out the podcast until the very end. I hugely appreciate the support of the Legion. Those numbers on YouTube and on all of the audio platforms increase week in and week out. The noise on the socials is reaching the upper echelons of the underground and certainly of most record labels, and that is all thanks to you guys. I'm so appreciative of it, and I am going to continue putting out one hopefully fucking killer episode after the next every single week because it is you that motivates me. Whatever it is that you are doing in the 7 days ahead until we meet again, wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Gaze up to the tower of Satan, and the fire blazing above it, the same flame that radiates in my mind has been reborn by Lucifer's fire. In this chamber of inversion, this is the crossroads of apostates, hoisting myself of the garments of lies, as then on the downward ladder to the tunnels of night. To the tunnels of night. Here in the bottomless depths of the black moon, everything returns to the zero. May these cold walls of rock witness my oath to the one who silences God's impulse, who silences God's impulse, who silences God's impulse, who silences God's impulse, who silences God's impulse. Swapping down Cecilia